Hey, good evening everybody. It's Middle Class Review for March 2019. How you going? Hope you had a good weekend. Now, what I'm going to get straight into it this time. There's been a lot of talk about the Royal Commission into the Australian banking system. And what does that mean to the average punter on the street? Or you at home, a mortgage holder, anyone like that. Anybody else being screwed over by the banks? Sure, you're pretty much everyone. Everyone has. I'll get straight to the point what I think will happen with a lot of these banks. I mean, a few people high up in the banks like NAB have quit. That's National Australia Bank. They've resigned, but they were multi-million-dollar packages anyway, so it doesn't really matter, and they'll probably get a job in the banking system again after things calm down. Do I think we have the, say, political guts in this country to actually do something about these crooks? You know, this is what the banks were doing. They were getting farmers, for instance, who were making their payments on time. They would say, sorry, you need to pay us the entire amount of your mortgage out by the end of the month, please, or we're taking your farm. And they did exactly that, even though people like this were making their payments. This was a very easy way for them to steal assets, pretty much. Yeah. Actually, personally know a guy who this happened to, and he didn't even have a big farm. He just had an acreage home. Disgraceful. Lots of other dodgy things have been going on. They're charging ridiculous fees. You'll notice that the big four banks have superannuation funds, and yes, they have the highest admin fees. Australia actually has the highest administration fees for superannuation funds in the world. If you don't know what superannuation is, my American friends, that's like your 401k. Disgusting. I know. These people are ripping us off sideways, and it's ridiculous, and they've been getting away with it. And think about it, when the Royal Commission was first called, it was called by none other than PM, our Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull at the time. And yes, Malcolm Turnbull used to work for Goldman Sachs, one of the big banks that caused the GFC. Way back when, 10 years ago? Or have you all got a short memory? I don't forget it. Yes, Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers were lending out money to the tune of $60 for every dollar in deposit they had. Whereas most Australian banks were lending out, $11 to each dollar in deposits they had. Pretty shoddy, eh? No wonder they caused big problems when people couldn't make payments on loans that they obviously couldn't afford. Yes, and what did the governments around the world do? They said, we'll just borrow more money and we'll bail you out. Can you imagine? You thought there was only American banks? No. The Treasurer of the Year, as voted by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, was, guess what? Not a Liberal Party treasurer, it was a Labor Party treasurer. Yes, it was Wayne Swan, who's still actually a member of Parliament, who's finishing up soon. He guaranteed an amount of over $350 billion to our big four banks. Yes, to basically keep that big four bank monopoly thing. Forget about the other smaller banks or credit unions. Over 350 billion Australian dollars guarantee to them. So if they basically screw up and act like a dodgy bunch of crooks and lose all the deposits in their bank accounts, well, guess what? The Australian taxpayer will bail them out to the tune of that. So we'll just borrow the money from, I don't know, probably European banks or Chinese, maybe even the Saudis like the United States does. Who knows? Either way, the person in the street gets screwed. Yeah, so it's not just the Liberal National Party. A lot of people go on saying a friend of the rich. No, it's also Labor too. And guess who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Banking Association right now? Yes, it's former Labor Premier Anna Bligh. Yes, she was the Premier of my state a while ago. Yeah, and even her government, she ran the state into the ground, borrowing heaps and selling lots of assets too, like Queensland Rail. Not much different to our current Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk. Do you really think she's on your side too? No. She's been selling off. She was the no asset sales Premier. Well, guess what? She sold off a heap of housing commission homes. She sold off the university at Castledine near my place, Queensland University of Technology campus, to Chinese developers. And she also sold off education land based at Yeronga and Oxley. Do your research. It's been documented. Pretty sad, really. So do you think these people are going to back you up with the banks? No. I think the banks are going to basically get off pretty much scot-free. So what do? I suggest this. Be your own bank. Take care of your own monetary funds. Have some money set aside for a rainy day. Don't go putting your money on credit cards and paying 18% interest. No, you don't need a brand new SUV just because every other soccer mum has one and have a 7-year car loan. No, not necessary. Look at what the smart banks are doing around the world. There are banks in Russia, in India, currently buying up real assets like agricultural land and gold. Not just, they don't just have US dollars sitting in the treasury there, which is just paper. So, think about it, guys. Look after yourself. Follow what the well-off are doing and smart banks are doing. Get your house in order. Get rid of that credit card debt and those crap personal loans that are eating you alive. The average Aussie's paying 18% interest on their credit card if they have credit card debt. Pretty sad when if you had $1 million in the bank, you're only going to get a 2.5% return from any of our big four banks. So anyway, best of luck, and as always, stay awesome.